choose Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
They want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
With the U.S. ending its COVID-19 national emergency in May, concerns growing over vaccine pricing and testing. Fox's Tanya J. Powers has details.
Moderna CEO Stefan Bancel is defending raising the price of its COVID vaccine, telling Senator Bernie Sanders in a recent hearing that there's a big difference in having only the federal government as a customer instead of individual pharmacies.
We used to have 10 doses in each vial. Now we're going to have every vial will have a different dose. This is not the same.
I understand it, but quadrupling the price is huge.
The CDC says 81% of the U.S. population has had at least one dose of a COVID vaccine. As for testing, at-home COVID tests can still be ordered for free from the federal government at covid.org.
Riders and workers of LA's public transit system criticizing it for its lack of safety. Fox's Christina Coleman reports.
Hundreds of thousands of people catch LA buses and trains every day. And apparently, in addition to the violence, the homelessness crisis is also impacting riders. One bus driver describes LA's public transit system as a homeless shelter on wheels. Now, LA County's Metro Transit Board of Directors says safety is their top priority. And they're also spending some time considering ways to ensure bias-free policing and, quote, lower the disproportionate number of citations issued to members of marginalized communities.
A new poll shows pessimism regarding the American dream.
A new Wall Street Journal NORC poll could spell trouble for the left. It finds 80% of Americans say the nation's economy is poor or not so good. 47% see it getting even worse over the next year. And 44% of Americans disagree that people like them and their families have a good chance of bettering their living standards. The poll also found that a majority of Americans now see a college degree as not worth the cost.
That's Fox's Chris DeMeo. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they will continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $4,100 by calling Family Finance in Hagåtña at 671-475-4545, Upper Tumon 671-647-5626, or in Dededo 671-633-4473.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Well, hello. Ray Gibson here to tell you it's officially Frontier season at Nissan Guam. Go test drive a new Frontier and own one with no money down. Plus, Nissan will make the first 3 payments for you. You'll love your new Frontier as much as I do mine. Plus, they're giving away cash, all sorts of prizes. Way too much to share in a 30-second commercial, so visit the showroom or visit the website, nissanguam.com today.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. As you can see, today we start another week with Red Shirt Monday. And there's no better way to start a day, a week, a month, a year than with a respectful reading of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is the way this show starts every single day. We groove on the Constitution of the United States, including the Bill of Rights, freedom, liberty, the American way, patriotism, natural law, among other things. So if those are the things you like, you are in the right place. If you don't like those things, boy, you really are in the right place because you all need some learning. Okay, let's see what we got going here in Zemi Ekotny today. See what kind of an excuse we have for an editorial. And it's our view. Consider the reasons why fireworks are illegal. Back in January, Senator Dwayne San Nicolas, whose tall tale's name is actually Santa Claus, introduced a bill to legalize consumer-grade fireworks. The bill aims to regulate the sale and use of safe and sane fireworks and add support in the legislature. The senator is hoping the sale of novelty fireworks will boost the economy. How in the hell can selling fireworks boost the economy? People are going to come from Japan to buy fireworks, from Korea, from Honolulu? I don't think so. And provide residents a fun way to celebrate the 4th of July, Liberation Day, and New Year's Eve. Yeah, maybe you could blow off a finger or put out an eye, cause some deafness. That ought to be a lot of fun, Jose. For the senator, it would fulfill a personal promise. I promised a 12-year-old kid a long time ago that I was going to make it right. You know who that 12-year-old kid was? It was me. A long time ago? Gee, even though it was a long time ago, he hasn't matured much, has he, Jose? Still presents himself as this large adult.
Just with a beard.
With a 12-year-old boy inside trying hard to get out. Under the bill, sellers of fireworks would have to be licensed under provisions determined by the Guam Fire Department. A record of each sale and importation will be implemented and will be subject to examination. Wow, maybe we can put public health in charge of it, right, Jose? Any fireworks sold for more than 2,000 units will be prohibited. What? For more than 2,000 units. That sentence doesn't make any sense. So we're not selling them for dollars anymore. We're selling them for units. How much is a unit? What's the current exchange rate on units, Jose?
A moon unit? Just a unit.
A unit, yeah.
Yeah, hey, that's a good question.
Yeah. Minors would also be prohibited from buying fireworks, but are allowed to set them off under adult supervision. Sellers who provide fireworks to minors will be fined up to $400, subject to a 1-year business license suspension and misdemeanor charges upon the third offense. It's kind of like they think the kids are going to smoke the fireworks, Jose.
It would be legal then.
Yeah. Before we legalize fireworks, we have to remember why they became illegal in the first place. Are you ready for this? Fireworks are dangerous. Putting an age limit on buyers won't stop minors from getting them. Minors cannot purchase alcohol and cigarettes, but kids still drink, smoke, and vape. How many times have we heard of fireworks-related incidents? The ones where houses burned down or people seriously hurt themselves. We do acknowledge that fireworks are a staple in holiday festivals and festivities and celebrations in Guam and nationwide. GFT Acting Fire Chief Joey San Nicolas said in a hearing on Bill 9. He said the vibrant colors and stunning displays bring joy to many, but the pros also comes with the cons. Remember, his testimony was dynamic.
It was dynamite.
Yeah. He just blew the senators out of the water. He said he wasn't going to testify in favor or against the bill. Well, why should he? He's just the fire chief.
That was explosive.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason that he didn't want to testify either pro or con was because he wanted to keep his powder dry and didn't want to worry about being hoist with his own petard, so to speak. According to the chief, nationally, fireworks were responsible for only 9 fatalities? Wow, I'd rather have legal fireworks than legal abortions. That's for damn sure. If that's the measurement. They started 11,500 injuries in 2021. They started 19,500 fireworks in 2018, including 1,900 structure fires and 500 vehicle fires. Before the bill moves forward, we need more information how we plan to keep the community safe while allowing an activity that is inherently dangerous. It's a great editorial. Copying a page from Joey San Nicolas's book. We're not going to say anything about it one way or another. We're going to punt by saying we need more information. Yeah. Okay, so here we go again. Because the Post doesn't run editorials anymore, nor does the Daily News for all practical purposes, I'm always on the lookout for other writers who write good stuff that actually fills the bill of an editorial. And more often than not, I wind up with Troy Torres over at Candid News, which may very well wind up being the last newspaper standing. If you consider the new definition of the word newspaper has nothing to do with the last half of that compound word. You don't need paper to have a newspaper anymore, at least for one of them. So here's what Troy says. An appropriation of $50 million every year could subsidize the college tuition of every public school graduate and provide the annual debt service to build several new schools. Instead, the Democrats in the legislature and the governor have elected to spend your additional $50 million every year in perpetuity. Boy, that's a long time, Jose. Perpetuity. How much longer is perpetuity then? How would the governor say perpetuity?
Forever!
Yeah. Which is longer, perpetuity or forever?
From the governor, it's forever.
Yeah. What was the title of today's show, Jose?
Today's show? Here. I put down, it doesn't take a leap to guess how long a 22% raise will last.
Forever!
There you go. Yeah. So, yeah, in perpetuity.
Forever!
Wow! Oi!
We're all allergic to her.
Yeah. I just hear that a couple of times and I start sneezing. My eyes start to water. Yeah. Where was that word, perpetuity? Yeah, every year in perpetuity to an across-the-board 22% pay raise for employees on the general pay plan. Do public employees deserve raises? Some of them do, I'm sure, but not all of them, especially not those already making high salaries. And let's just stop on that for a second. What kind of a signal do you send 11,000 employees if you give every one of them the same size bonus? There's no sense working hard. There's no sense being productive. Have any creative talents? Keep them to yourself. The only thing you have to do in order to succeed, which is mean to make more money, don't get fired. That's all you have to do. And if you can somehow manage not to get fired, this governor has shown you that you'll get the same raise as the other guy, the other gal, who comes to work on time every day, works really hard, does high quality work, and is always contributing to the organization. They get 22%. You who stayed one step ahead of an adverse action get 22%. That's just not the way to run any kind of an organization. Never. But of course, and then the liturgy comes in. The liturgy means that every time you mention government of Guam workers, you have to talk about hard-working government workers. And our hard-working government workers need a raise, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody knows, no one could possibly know when you've got 11,000 government employees if anyone works hard, or how many work hard, or how many don't work hard. But you've got to say our hard-working government employees every time it comes up, yeah. How many government employees are there? Oh, there are 11,000 hard-working government employees. Right?
That's to differentiate them from the not so hardworking government. Well, no, they don't identify those.
It doesn't exist.
They don't exist.
No. And if they did, we couldn't talk about it, right? We'd be canceled. And in the context of priorities, no reasonable citizen would put pay raises ahead of the clearly lacking fundamental services this $1 billion government has neglected for decades. If we do it all with the so-called amazing financial state situation of GovGuam, according to the governor, then where is the plan to build those new students? Hell, we can't even fix the ones we have. GovGuam is on the brink of losing free money from the feds that is supposed to fix the schools. Yeah, they got a deadline, and the folks over at public schools have said, we don't have enough money spenders to properly spend our money. So, we're way behind in spending the money. That's a really good excuse, right?
Yeah, and instead of trying to fix that, our governor obstructed those sessions.
Exactly. If we can do, as you were, GovGuam can't even build Simon Sanchez High School. No problem, though, because the wall is strong enough to hold up the rainbow gay pride flag. And we know that from Mr. Camacho, right? Christian Camacho. GovGuam can't even build Simon Sanchez High School after a decade since it was authorized. Last election, Governor Leon Guerrero specifically promised groundbreaking in December last year. What a joke.
99%. It was 99% done.
Yeah.
Remember?
What about universal preschool for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds? What about supplies for teachers and students? What about funding for training and professional development of teachers and staff? There remain only 260 Guam Police Department officers. Why don't we just say Guam police officers? Do we have to work that word department every time? Come on, Troy. There are 260 Guam police officers on the payroll when we're supposed to have 500 at any given time. This is nearly 5 years after the governor first promised to add 100 officers to the force. And that was when former Governor Eddie Calvo handed over a police force that exceeded 300 officers. We're told the financial situation is the best it's ever been. And in the same breath, the governor's implored senators to keep the increased business privilege tax at 5% of gross receipts. She, quote, never, close quote, wants to see the rate go back to the level she promised in the election of 2018. Why? If the finances are so great, why can't the ordinary consumers of the island realize a tax break? No, The idea is to give as much money as we can to the government because they'll make much better decisions with your money than you could possibly make, Jose.
So we shouldn't be continuously thanking her for the surplus. We should be thanking us for the surplus.
Exactly. Is it because we need new roads? Oh, that's right. Federal highway funds pay for those unrouted free roadways, and our tax dollars evidently go to repair village streets. Otherwise, they wouldn't look like scenes from a war zone. Is our money going to repairs needed at decrepit Guam Memorial Hospital? They can't even secure online infrastructure. What's more, they're leaking roof, dying electrical panel, and 20th century maternity ward. Of course, the governor has a plan to eliminate the necessity for having a maternity ward. If you don't have any births, you don't need no stinking maternity ward. At a government workforce of 13,000, there now is more than one GovGuam employee for every 10 adults on the island. Yet the line for services at RevTax tells a different story. Do you lose your job and need food benefits and Medicaid? Sorry, your hunger and prescription medicine is going to have to wait for the bureaucracy to get it together. And if you're a kid in foster care who's being abused by your foster parent, you're just going to have to wait, like everyone else, for the Department of Public Harassment and Secret Services to get to your complaint. The government of Guam has other priorities. Pay raises. The alignment has been made by proponents of the raises that GovGuam may lose employees to the private sector if wages don't go up beyond the merited-based increases allowable under increment entitlements. Good. The government of Guam is already too big. Yes, sir. Right on, Troy. And that's the way to cut down the size of the government.
Not grow it.
Yeah. Here's a solution to the pay issue. Governor, pay the merit bonuses. Actually update the Hay study to scientifically calculate the increase each position under the pay plan should be paid. Don't base it on national comparatives because that's just silly. And when senators propose to fund the solutions needed to the problems the public has prioritized, don't tell us there isn't enough money after handing out pay raises. As former Governor Calvo liked to say, don't tell me it's raining when you're pissing on my boots. A graphic statement. I remember when Governor Calvo made that statement. I ought to add that to great pronouncements right up there with Vanessa Williams. Okay, we don't need a drum roll, but let's add a little drama to this anyhow, Jose. There we go. The coveted Blue Star. Troy Torres at Candid News. Congratulations, Troy. That makes number 11 for Candid.
Was that 11 out of 11?
Pretty darn close, yeah. So
in a good average.
Troy, if you happen to be listening, WhatsApp me your mailing address. I'm going to send this one to you because it's suitable for framing. Troy is one of the only 3 people in the entire world that can attire himself in the coveted Blue Star T-shirt. I don't even have a Blue Star T-shirt. I've got a red. Oh, bite your tongue, Bob. I've got a red shirt. I've got 3 tailgater shirts, but I don't have a Blue Star shirt. Troy does, Helen Middlebrook does, and Lee Weber does. A point of real distinction. Okay, so much for editorials such as they are. One flub from the Daily News, one real one from Troy.
Remind me again, though, Bob, what was the rush to do these pay raises? Why could they not think about it more? Because we heard a couple of regrets for voting yes, even though it was very flawed, the evidence.
Yeah.
Why were they rushing it?
Well, once again, it was the salary mousetrap. Governor promised it for April 1. And except for 5 Republicans, nobody had the guts to say, we can do this, but we can't do it as a one-off. We've got to do it as part of the budget process. But, the governor played it right. She led with April 1, and when it came for the time for the legislature to play their cards, they got out those cards that say appropriation, and we've got to play these cards before April 1 because that's the governor's lead. So once again, she trapped them. And of course, there's no reason for her not to do it every time because it seems to work so well. All right, I already got some folks in the green room here. I got Senator Duenas, and I've got the other Governor Leon Guerrero. And Senator Duenas wants to talk about raises, and so does Ken. You're first, Chris. Go for it.
Alpha Day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Honorable Senator, my favorite talk show host. Boy, I tell you, one of the most striking moments, and we're doing our research right now to make sure that we put this all out before we present it. There was a chart that we asked for in terms of government employment, and Troy is right on the money, man. He is just killing it for the last couple of weeks, but I'm so glad he got the Blue Star today. But between 2017 and 2018, the actual government employment under general fund grew about maybe 50 or 60 employees. And then for the balance of the term, when this governor came in up until 2021, we didn't have the 2022 specs. It grew by 1,800 employees.
Wow.
So there's no question exactly why the payroll and all these positions, and we have that. That was the moment when we truly said, "Stop the bus." Let's get down to business here and find out where these, what these numbers are. Here's the second, and I'm so glad Senator Jesse Lujan did this. Here's the second really, really crazy moment. Senator Barnett moved to exclude classified employees. And the primary reason for that was to basically try to weed out the political hires and then see what are the critical unclassified employees that are recruited under federal grants for technical positions and other situations. And so basically, with the exception of a few positions, we did it across the board. I mean, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. The craziness ensued, and we had like a 45-minute recess because we got the burn, as you like to say, from the burn during our hearing. Because when we kept talking about these unclassified employees, we asked him, affected by the general fund, we said, how many are you talking about here? He said, a handful. And so when all the craziness started and all the phone calls started coming in, and we understand there's a major uproar about this right now, and using the vernacular of what had happened was, turns out there's well over 1,000 positions affected by this. Wow. And when Byrne was questioned, unfortunately not under oath because we didn't discover this, but through a phone call, he said, I meant a handful of positions, meaning position descriptions. Your Honor, the question was clearly asked. We knew we were talking about employees. He knew we were talking about employees. But, it was a way of skirting the issue. So this is how convoluted and messed up, and exactly the reason why this will be probably the most voluminous, a massive conduct of a study that I don't believe was even a study. Your Honor, I believe that, because of the way we've been tracking for the last several years and, money has been spent by not doing it through the budget process, but forcing pay raises down our throat, doing things unilaterally as this governor is really accustomed to. and just constantly seeing if there's excess revenue to turn around and make sure that there's never a funding source, even though Ed Byrne himself said $120 billion on the government of Guam rolls is not doesn't have to be accounted for anymore because of EITC and ACTC, which is additional welfare benefits that no longer has to be paid by the government of Guam. That in itself is 2 times the 6%, the 5%. God bless me saying 6%, you never know. But 5% going to 4%, that's twice already the funding source available for that, on top of, the revenues coming in on the basis of this massive $3 billion that have come into the government, the government of Guam, and of course the corresponding increases. But this is not going to last for long. Your Honor, as I close, it's interesting how the timing and the force of the timing on this, I think because of all the things that we would discover, the government was tracking between $9 and $11 million for the first 4 months of the fiscal year, and all of a sudden it dropped off to $3 million in this last month. And special funds grew their deficit to $9 million. So if you take that corresponding deficit on special funds and minus it by the 45 that we have here, when you take the education money, which she better not veto, in terms of the $30 million going forward, there really isn't the money for this. But it was thrown down our throats, and I'm proud of the Republicans for sticking together and not voting for it. And I think this is a big mess, and it was done to basically just get through this political promise, and to hell with everybody else. And it's wrong, and I'm glad our Republican caucus voted no.
Chris, with the Adelup 6, of course, they're loyal to the governor, but beyond the Adelup 6, it would seem to me that any self-respecting senator would not allow the governor to use the salary, you've heard me describe the salary mousetrap, to use the salary mousetrap and to use it twice. Even if they were in favor of the pay raise, to do what she did. Okay, come April 1, I'm giving everybody a 22% salary increase. Oh, by the way, legislature, you guys need to appropriate the money for that. So if you don't appropriate it, then every government employee is going to put your picture up and pin the tail on the senator because the governor gave him the pay raise and you guys wouldn't fund it. I mean, it's just so elementary and so transparent that the 6, I guess, because they're already tied so closely to the governor, but the other 2, what happened to them, or what didn't happen to them?
It was kind of frustrating because, there were some amendments, like I said, that were proffered to try to bring it in, to alignment. And there was a lot of expressions of frustration over what happened. But, there wasn't that resilient vote to just say no, And even when we got the Byrne and we asked them, said, hey, so what's going to happen if, is doomsday on April 1? Well, the pay plan's been adopted, but if you don't fund it, we'll just have to figure it out going forward. There was no doomsday clock on this thing. It's the mess that we found, and the fact that we had way more questions than answers in the end of that function. And you had a lot of the Adelup 6 that consistently tried to get us to rise from the committee of the whole and just vote on it because they were just so tired of realizing that this thing is such a mess. And we, and all the effort to disrupt us from our emergency session to do this, you could tell the reason why there was so much pressure to just throw this thing down, because it was a mess, and they knew it was a mess. They knew that they started with a figure, Your Honor, as far as I'm concerned. They said, we have $55 million to spend so that we don't have to reduce the BPT. Give me a calculation on what that means in terms of, the pay increase. And they came back and said, well, we ran the numbers, we did the chart, and it's 22%. Okay, it's 22%. That's the plan. I guarantee you that's how it happened. Because there's no way on God's green earth that this thing was done through any formula base, and it certainly wasn't a competitive wage act, and it wasn't a Hay study. Because you can't study position by position and come up with, I know what we'll do. We'll just give everybody a 22% raise. Well, that was studied. I tell you, as a kid, I remember, in the back of the book when I was studying, the answers were there. The problem with doing that, the teacher would always tell me, yeah, you can put it in the back of the book and get the answers. The problem is when I put a worksheet out in front of you and you have to show how you arrived at your answer, you won't know what you're doing.
I keep coming back to the mechanics of the salary trap, Chris. So let's say that the governor wants to build a new building for public health and social services. So what she does is she says, I'm going to build a new headquarters for public health and social services out there in Milo. It's going to cost $40 million. We're breaking ground on it next week. Oh, and by the way, legislature, before we break ground, you got to appropriate $40 million.
I said that on the floor today for the override of 13. That's exactly what is going to happen, guaranteed. This is unilateral government. I told the members that want to keep letting it go. If you want a monarchy, if you want a dictatorship, well, you might as well just continue to roll over then, because that's what we have.
Well, we have a government of tricks, is what it amounts to. I'm going to play a trick on you guys. I'm going to get out my copy of The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli and see how I can get you to do what you want to do, even though you know better than doing what I want you to do. And that's the salary trap. So here's something you might consider, Chris. Mm-hmm. You have local statute now that says the budget must be completed by a date certain in September, correct?
Yeah, I believe it's August 31st.
Yeah. So you might want to go through and amend that and take the words budget must be completed, take it out of the statute. Because we don't need no stinking budget. We just make it up as we obligate ourselves first, and then having done that and build up the necessary promissory capital to get support for what we want to do, then we look at the money and see if we can, where we're going to scrape the money up from. So we don't need the budget anymore.
Might as well, because actually, Your Honor, I know this definitely never happened under your time, but I'm going to be hard pressed to think, as much as you follow the legislature, that you've ever seen some kind of craziness of appropriating revenues, so-called unaudited excess revenues, from the last 4 months on the 5th month in the same year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. And now we're talking about appropriating some revenues from prior year 2022, and it's still not audited.
Well, here's my
runaway train.
Here's my analysis, Chris. You're analyzing. You're coming up. You're pointing out everything that's wrong. You're showing all of the faults, but you're showing it to people who don't give a damn, and you're not going to modify their behavior that way. So my suggestion is that a stubby pencil and some paper, you're going to have to introduce legislation that takes that ability away from her. Because now that she's seen how well it works, you're going to be looking for the next 4 years of the same kind of stuff.
You're right. And, Your Honor, the reason why I've made so much noise about this, and guess where my bill sits, that mandates that the governor, any governor, not just this governor, for heaven's sake, going forward, cannot ever do pay raises again unless they're considered in the annual budget call.
Yeah.
But, of course, those that control that committee are like, oh, hell no, we're not going to listen to that. But thankfully, we were able to, in this legislature, change the standing rules to which 120 calendar days, not working days, is the absolute drop dead that bills have to be heard, and we have the ability to hear them ourselves. So at least it will get heard, even though a committee wants to just hide it. But that's my first move. I guess my second move is just to remove any deadlines for the budget, because we don't need a budget. We just, those that want to just roll over can just roll over.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you went with calendar days instead of working days, because if that were the case, and we're talking about the legislature, you probably would never get to the deadline.
Working days? What's a working day? Thanks, Your Honor.
And by the way, apparently that standing rules have been amended because it's now all right for a member to make an ad hominem attack on another member on the floor of the legislature. Is that correct? Have the rules been changed?
Yeah, oh my goodness! I tell you that rule wasn't changed, but it certainly is circus. You know, I mean, I've seen spirited debate, and you know, I've watched spirited debate in other legislatures, but yeah, these kind of wild attacks that kind of interesting too, how they mimic Julian Jensen and the progressive Democrat and all that crazy stuff that they throw out there. You know, and instead of doing everything but talking about what the subject matter is, and that's what it's all about. It's all just a distraction because they simply don't want to deal with what's on paper right now because it doesn't fit and it doesn't compute.
Well, my recollection is that in floor debate, you could criticize a member's bill. You could criticize his argument, his reasoning, his speech, but you can't grab the microphone and say, this is not a good bill because Chris Duenas is a dirty skunk and an honorary pig stealer. You just can't do that. At least you never could before. I guess it's okay now if you put a lot of signs up before the election, right?
Yeah. Hopefully the return to decorum in the chair admonishes and is a little quicker on the gavel. Because we can't continue this way. The proper debate and proper decorum is paramount to getting things done.
Yeah. If all you want to do is engage in the Roy Kanata kind of tactics, we don't need a legislature. You just need a couple talk show hosts, and that's all you need.
A couple of talk show hosts and probably a couple of crazy Facebook pages, unmonitored.
Yeah.
But we're going to take care of that, too. That's another discussion. So thanks a lot, Your Honor. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, and one more thing, Chris.
Sure.
Julian Jensen has an interesting approach to the so-called Mini Hatch Act. I've been following this as closely as I can from the newspapers, but when this first happened, I analyzed it and said you could arguably make a case for forgery and uttering out of the fact pattern that we're aware of. But Julian Jensen apparently thinks the Mini Hatch Act protects a classified employee from from forgery charges. That's a novel approach.
That's exactly what Senator Fisher is getting to the bottom of with the resolution for the investigative committee out of the legislature. And not only that, besides the forgery charge, because he was the one who produced the document online and apologized and admitted that he did it, apology not accepted, but now he's also, having made the claim of it being a legislative employee, now without coming clean on who his source is basically also committing aiding and abetting.
Well,
I don't think the Mini Hatch Act takes care of that at all.
No, none of it does. And as I explained the other day, making of the bogus document is forgery. Circulating it, giving it to somebody else, publishing it, whatever, is called uttering. So he's at least culpable, apparently, of uttering. There is a mens rea requirement. He had to know that it was false. But he obviously did it with deliberate disregard as to his truthfulness or falseness. But, that's the kind of thing that his boss ought to clamp down on him. Now, he says he doesn't work for the governor's office. He's at BOSAP. But you look at the organizational chart of the government of Guam, BOSAP is part of the governor's office.
It absolutely is part of the governor's office, and I think his director right now is abrogating her responsibility, and I think that she should take action, because for a guy like this to escape adverse action, knew or would or should have known. The director knows, and she knows. The governor knows, and also because of correspondence from Troy, many people down on Adelup, starting from the communications director all the way through Adelup and the chief, know. So they all know or should have known. And maybe they don't want the 60-day clock to run for them to take adverse action on this employee, one Julian Jensen, who's committed a criminal act.
Yeah, I'll just stall it off. Well, thanks again for calling, Chris, and keep up the good fight, huh?
Thanks, Your Honor. Definitely, and we're going to keep going. We're not going to let this one go. Take care.
Very good. Okay, we got to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to the other Governor, Leon Guerrero.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years
us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, well, I'm going to be soaring over the crowd with my superpowers of truth, aided by the legendary Ken Leon Guerrero. So help me out here, Ken.
Well, first, I think Senator Duenas should file a complaint with the Attorney General's office because forgery is a felony.
He filed a complaint already.
And,
he did.
Oh, good. Well, I hope Doug follows up with it because one of Doug's mandates, and he campaigned on it, was to restore confidence and trust within the government of Guam. But when you have things like this happen, this does nothing to restore trust and confidence in anything coming out of any department of government of Guam. You know, I mean, if government employees can make up stuff, oh, we're in for a rough ride. But the reason why I was calling in is, you know, we keep talking about the government of Guam pay raise, but we know that's going to be replicated throughout the entire government. So we're looking at about $100 million. Already we got solid waste wanting to raise rates. Water, I remember when water raised rates a few years ago, one of their justifications was they needed to raise salaries at Guam Water to make the positions more competitive with the local employment market. And so they went in, I forget what it was, $2 million, $3 million pay dollars for the staff. And so they got a pay raise. Then we're going to have GWA going to get a pay raise. Then the airport's going to get a pay raise. The port's going to get a pay raise. University's going to get a pay raise. Community college is going to get a pay raise. And then the governor's going to come back and say, you know, all these other departments and agencies have raised their compensation, and we need to raise government of Guam's compensation to prevent employee migration.
It's hard to engage in that reasoning process without using the word tautology, isn't it, Ken?
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was at a special economic session meeting, and at that time, Ed Byrne was saying that the payroll cost, including benefits, was about 87.6%. You know, with this, we're knocking on probably 90% now. So that doesn't leave a lot of room to actually do the work of the government. We'll have fully staffed offices as long as the rents are paid and the utility bills are paid, but they won't have anything to work with. I mean, teachers now, when at the first day of school, they send home letters with their students, send in toilet paper, hand soap, paper towels, copy paper. I mean, the students' parents are supporting the supply needs of the Department of Education because the Department of Education doesn't supply anything. You know, I mean, I can see it now. When I get arrested next time, I'm going to be required to bring my own handcuffs or strip ties with me before I get arrested again because the police officers don't have any. You know, I'll have to drive myself down to the lockup because their cars, you know, they won't have cars either. So, you know, it's ridiculous that we keep making the same mistake over and over again. Our politicians haven't learned, and the reason our politicians haven't learned is as much as our voters have stood up and down and screamed that we want change, we want integrity, we want honesty. Every time we come to the voting booth, we vote for the same people over and over again. And so that emboldens them, and that's why we're seeing the kind of flagrant abuse of taxpayers that we're seeing. I had hopes that the 37th would be better because we did get a few new people in. And it kind of looked like it might be better, but it's turning out not to be so much better. We'll see on the 12 when the override vote comes up on 12 and 13. Because if all of a sudden 6 senators are persuaded by the incredible discussion and arguments put forth by the administration why she should be the sole decider on the fate of a $5 billion project, then I think that's going to be like our Puerto Rico moment. You know, if that happens, then that I think is going to be what's going to have Guam become the second U.S. territory to get go into federal receivership. Because there's no way our current economy can support it, regardless of what the governor says, especially now that she's given whatever increases in revenue, she's turning around and putting it into pay raises instead of supplies, equipment, and services and support for the taxpayers. I'm glad some of the employees who badly needed raises got badly needed raises. But, you know, I've looked at those sheets, and Department of Labor own statistics show that the average government of Guam employee makes twice as much as a non-government employee. That's why non-government employees have to have 2 and 3 jobs just to be able to stay here on Guam. That's the problem we need to be addressing right there. Because when the last non-government employee leaves this island for someplace better in the United States where the cost of living is a lot lower, who's going to pay the taxes to keep these government employees getting these double-digit raises every couple of years?
Good point, Ken.
Well, I'm hoping that the senators are at least going to hold the line and require the governor and government to follow the open government law. It's sad that we have to pass a law to have the government follow the law, but that's what we've come down to.
You're right.
So now they passed it. Now let's have all 15 of them vote for the override. That would be a good step towards beginning the process of restoring trust in the government. It's not going to restore the trust yet. We have to have more than a single act of contrition. We need to have a constant series of actions by this body showing that they honestly believe they were elected to serve the people.
Right on, Ken. Thanks a lot for chiming in. As usual, you're right on point and not bashful when it comes to laying it out, telling it like it is. I appreciate that.
Well, keep the show going. We need more voices like yours out here.
Okay, Ken. Thank you. So the card for today is obviously we start with systemic racism, Public Law 36-34, Marie Rojas versus Christian Camacho, Smart Alec versus Ancestral Owners, Weber versus Lots. Now, there's a couple of names. Weber would be someone who makes webs, and Lots tells you how many. Lots of webs, right? And the Post versus the PDN, Fisher versus Johnson, Doug versus the ACLU, Kazmarek versus Chemical Abortion, Rupert Murdoch versus Tucker Carlson, Wokesters versus the Language. And, of course, today is Monday, so we've got the Hope Cristobal Show ready to key up right after the big halftime show, which is, we're almost at halftime, right, Jose?
It's probably about a minute before we start going through it.
So I'm just going to tell you who's here today. Lonnie Salas, Therese Garcia, let's see, Jose, Ted Pago, Bonnie Suba, and Matthew Galendis, Mark Cruz making his mark. Army Lynn. What is it? R-me Lynn. Army Lynn, huh? Yeah, and there aren't many, but they're very active. Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the Hope Cristobal Show.
This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No more survivors. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. Emergency crews locating 2 more bodies at the site of the RM Chocolate Factory in Berks County, Pennsylvania, bringing the total number of fatalities from Friday's explosion to 7. 10 people were injured. All of the victims have been found. Tornadoes killing at least 26 people in Mississippi and Alabama over the weekend, leaving communities in devastation. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell discussing President Biden's emergency declaration.
What this major disaster declaration does is it ensures that we can bring in the right resources now to help start the recovery process and support any of the ongoing response actions that may be needed in these communities.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves issuing a state of emergency and promising to rebuild the state. A police chopper crash killing 2 Baton Rouge police officers in a suburb near Louisiana's capital city.
We're asking the community to be respectful of the investigative process because it does take time, so that we can release all of the facts related to this incident to the family as well as to the community.
Baton Rouge Police Chief Murphy Paul. Several migrants were found dead in train cars near the southern border on Friday and Saturday.
Union Pacific tells us these incidents stand as a grim reminder of why they make every effort to stop people from trespassing on their property and their trains. On Friday, 17 migrants found trapped. Someone called 911 to say there were migrants inside suffocating near Uvalde County, Texas. We know at least 2 migrants have died and more than a dozen others needed medical treatment. Sources tell us the migrants boarded the train to be smuggled to other parts of Texas. The cartels do this on a daily basis.
That's Fox's Alexis McAdams in Mission, Texas. America is listening to Fox News.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Former President Trump holding a campaign rally in Waco, Texas over the weekend. Fox's Alexandria Hoff has the details.
This was the first time that we heard the former president speak at length about the investigations against him. He said that every piece of his life had been turned upside down. The current GOP frontrunner called the 2024 election the final battle and highlighted what he feels is among the country's top concerns.
The weaponization of our justice system is not, as some have called it, a political spectacle. This is the central issue of our time. I think it's one of the biggest issues.
This rally came exactly 1 week after the former president predicted that he would be arrested in 3 days' time as a result of an investigation launched by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Well, that Tuesday came without action.
It's the former president's first rally in his 2024 presidential bid. Even though there are no more pistol permits in Alabama, criminal defendants being charged with carrying a gun without a permit still exist. Fox's Eben Brown reports.
Alabama endorsed constitutional carry, doing away with permits to carry a handgun, but a number of people are still waiting for their days in court because they were charged for carrying with no permit from before the law changed. Attorney Tom Walsh is defending such clients using a Prohibition-era argument.
I mean, it's a 1934 case that is still good, that is still used, that is still cited.
Walsh says it was a dismissal of charges of possessing booze following the end of Prohibition, and it can be used to argue for dismissals of lacking a gun permit in the age of permitless carry.
The Army pulling recruiting ads featuring actor Jonathan Majors after his arrest Saturday on charges of strangulation, assault, and harassment. The actor, co-starring in the hit films Creed 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
So there we are once again, the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery. Let them have it, Jose.
You too can stand tall in I'm a Tailgater t-shirt by pointing your browser to thepoint.gu, the official website of this radio station. There you can find a t-shirt with beard. Click on that photo because it'll bring you to the site where you can order your shirt. And when it arrives, take a selfie, send it to The Point's WhatsApp at 671-797-8255, and you too can be a part of the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery at the Big Halftime Show.
Very good, Jose. And being on the Tall Tales Rogues Gallery is something you really want to see if you can achieve. It's perhaps going to be one of the highest accolades a lot of you will ever be able to achieve, and it's really worth a lot. So give it a shot. Okay, let's go straight to the Hope Cristobal screen test. We're hoping that someday they'll find a role for Hope in a Hollywood movie, but they aren't making very many horror shows anymore.
Colonizer! You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization. You're the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. We need to just do different. We need to do better. Get off my island!
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw, sige, Jordan, tano. Titaw tano, how? Waho bini taw tano. Waho bini malahoda. Waho short na tayo zubidi. Hago taza na short mo bini. What's on you? You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please, Father.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not
When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Please. Oh, you think
What happened, ma'am?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Hi, Mama.
We're proud of you, Auntie.
So just Malasi.
Tells you almost everything you need to know about the Commission on Decolonization, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sounds legit to me.
Yeah, that's the face and voice of the separati here on the island, the folks that would like Guam to be separated from the United States. Hope is the face and voice. She's the chairperson of the Chamorro Language Commission, former senator, well known amongst her peers, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by a professor at the university. You know, I guess the old saying is you live long enough, you're liable to see almost anything. I think I've almost surpassed that with this one, Jose. Okay, so much for the screen test. Next item on the card is the Public Law 3634 section. And as you know, I looked through the classified pages of both newspapers, looking for notices of meeting and seeing who makes mistakes. The hospital and the Visitors Bureau are right up there in the lead. But I got an interesting one today. This is notice to heirs. All heirs are claimants of Ada Butler and Trifon Z. Valencia. So if you're an heir of either of those two folks, Department of Public Works has been attempting to contact heirs or claimants of those two folks without success. They are both deceased and are the registered owners of Lot 2143-2-R2-R/W, Tamuning. DPW hopes to purchase 30 plus or minus square meters of that land, which is needed for Phase 2 of the Route 14B reconstruction widening project. DPW's appraisal list the fair market value as $6,000. You are hereby notified to contact Elizabeth Marzan, et cetera, et cetera. You're notified that if DPW, you don't contact DPW, they're going to ask the legislature for authority to take that property by eminent domain. Now, this is an interesting notice, Jose, but they don't list all the facts. They say that they'll give the heirs $6,000, but then they haven't told them how much more they'll get. You know, the second time they ask, and when they're going to get the land back. Because obviously, Butler and Valencia are ancestral landowners, right? If it's our own government, they should treat us they should treat us better than the feds do, right? And besides that, maybe Butler and Valencia didn't want the property to be condemned, which makes it worth at least $18,000, right? Okay, next item I've got here is a public hearing. I noticed a public hearing put out by the hospital, and the hospital wants you to know that they're having a hearing on existing hospital rates, fees, and charges. And they're also going to introduce the hospital's new rates, fees, and charges. They're telling you where you can find documents related to that. And the agenda will be introduction of the public, GMHH management and staff, purpose of the hearing, testimonies from the public, presentation of fees, testimonies from the public, questions and answers, and adjournment. So if you want to be heard on raising hospital fees, this hearing would be for you. Going on to the next item on the card, of course, is systemic racism. And since I'm wearing my red shirt today, I don't think I need to really elaborate. If you're looking at your screen on Facebook and you see a colored shirt that's anything but red, be careful. Don't say anything about that to anybody because you might get canceled. If you have the temerity to say, Bob, that shirt is orange, whoa. You know, you could be in for a really serious time.
There are some that really, really are envious of your shirt. They're seeing green. Green?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's the eco-fascists, right? The environmental wackos.
Wackos.
I don't think there are many of them in the tailgater audience, though, Jose.
Well, not when it comes to, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, unless they're just there to try to sabotage things. Okay, next item on the card is Maria Rojas versus Christian Camacho, and I've mentioned this before. I'm waiting for the outrage to begin. Maria Rojas' son was in a classroom at Simon Sanchez High School. The teacher was Christian Camacho, and he posted a rainbow flag on the wall in the classroom, the so-called gay pride flag.
Southern High would be the high school.
I'm sorry, Southern High, not Simon.
Not Simon.
SHS, yeah.
Yes.
Southern High. It's Southern High, not Simon. Sorry, Simon. Simon Sanchez. Yeah, so when Marie confronted him on it, his solution to the problem was, well, we can transfer him to another classroom. And then he also told her, let's see, what did he say? I never can find it on my paper here. He said that gay is around to stay. It's not going to go away. So they should just get used to it. And her son was transferred out of the classroom. So once again, systemic racism. Teachers have a right to indoctrinate their classes as to I won't call it a lifestyle because they're misusing the word life. The homosexual approach to things and the pride in being homosexual as evidenced by the rainbow flag and as evidenced by a teacher posting it in his classroom, sort of like saying, hey guys, you know, it's kind of like being a Cubs fan. This is really neat. It just has no place in public education. And Marie said that she had called the secretary of the Board of Ed, got no response, talked to Ron McNench, who's usually quite vociferous on matters like this. We haven't heard a peep from Ron McNench on it. So we're going to keep this on the card until I figure out some way to direct more attention. I think Christian Camacho needs to be famous. He needs to have something to be proud of.
And he admitted it's a political statement.
Yeah, yeah. Now, of course, and he sees that he and Julian Jensen read the so-called Hatch Act with the same unfocused bifocals, apparently, because Julian sees the Minish Hatch Act as immunizing him against charges of forging and uttering. And apparently, Christian Camacho sees the Mini-Hatch Act as giving him the opportunity to speak about something that is personal to him and has no business in a classroom whatsoever. Maybe we need to amend the Mini-Hatch Act. So that's on the card. I've got Smart Alec versus Ancestral Owners. And Jose, I don't know if you know this, but ALIG is pronounced Alec, not Alec.
Alec.
Alec, yeah. I've got Weber versus Lotz, Post versus PDN, Fisher versus Jansen, Doug versus the ACLU, Kazmarek versus chemical abortion, Rupert Murdoch versus Tucker, Wokesters versus the language, and I've got somebody, apparently someone in the green room, R. Keith, who wants to talk about Mr. Camacho from Southern High School. Go ahead, R. Keith.
Good afternoon, Bob. What I don't understand is, well, I mean, I do understand, really. Why the need to jam or advertise one's sexual proclivities or preference or whatever the term is to students? You know, I grew up in the 80s, okay? That's quite a time ago. We had several gay teachers. I had gay professors in college. And we all knew it. Nobody cared. And they didn't walk around in rainbow gear with flags and, you know, dressed in black spandex and whatever other silliness is going on today. They went on their very lives. No one cared. Now, however, it's, you know, it really is in your face. And I would venture to state that, like then, most people now really don't care what you do in the bedroom or what your romantic interests are. Okay, have at it. Have a great time. Why this insistence on jamming it, if you'll pardon the pun, jamming it down people's throats?
Careful, R. Keith.
Yeah. You know, it's not that people tolerate, it's that people approve. And, you know, is this an insecurity on their part? That they feel the need to receive approval?
You know,
or is it just obnoxiousness?
R. Keith, the way I see it, they started out, just tolerate, just tolerance, let us go, we'll be okay, just tolerate. And then to change from that to acceptance, well, you have to accept, you know, being gay, same-sex attraction, you have to accept it as normal. And now we've moved on to, if that's all you do, you're a bigot and a homophobe because you must celebrate. You must celebrate, and that's Christian Camacho at Southern High, and then of course, regardless of where you are on your sexual proclivities, it's not part of the curriculum at any of the high schools yet. And I suppose the next, let's say that we had some young man about town who was very promiscuous. And he developed this insignia built around the letter P. And every time he met his class, he'd say, I'm really promiscuous. You know how many notches I put in my belt last night? 4. How would that go? Would we tolerate that? I don't think so.
And not surprisingly, the next step, which is we went from tolerate, accept. Now it's you must cheer it on. I'm actually seeing snippets on some social media, and it's centered on this whole trans issue, that if you are not attracted to, for instance, if a man is not attracted to a trans man, which is a woman, then you're a bigot. So now we are verging on the edge of not only must you support it, you must participate.
Yeah, it's a form of mandatory pretending. Well, thanks for chiming in, R. Keith. I've got Ron McNinch and Troy Torres that want to weigh in on this one. So we got
enjoy.
Yeah, you were the leadoff man. Thanks again, R. Keith.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, next we have Professor Ron McNinch. Go for it, Ron.
Hey, half a day, Cinder, half a day, Guam. Thank you very much, Cinder. I was off island until just a couple of days ago. So basically, I did have a parent contact me. It was an anonymous contact, and I simply forwarded the information, to the operations folks who deal with these things on what the right call was. Because in general, we do try to stay out of like management issues as a board, but I did report it, and I will be following up on it in terms of what's the disposition of it. I don't know the status of it right now. I do have a personal opinion about this subject, though, aside from my board position. I have respect for many gay people and gay adults and people who I have family members who are gay, and I've always openly defended gay people because I respect gay people. But I think this is a separate issue. I think that this question is, why do our young people need to have this in the classroom? Do our young people need to be exposed to these kinds of things in the classroom? I am concerned when adults feel they need to talk about sexual things around children. I worry about that. As a parent myself of 2 kids, I worry about when my children were younger, when they were in school, the things that were said to them and the things that their teachers would say to them. I always worried about it. And I think that in general, that might be the starting point for discussion from a policy standpoint, and that is, are these things appropriate for the classroom? And I don't know. It's an interesting question that should be discussed a bit more.
And I think it is a policy matter.
I believe it's a policy matter also that deserves policy emphasis.
Yeah. Now let's say that my name was Herman Schmidt, or better yet, Helmut Schmidt, and I was a teacher in the Guam Public Schools, and I posted a picture of Hitler with a swastika on it in my classroom. And I said, Okay, out there, class, Deutschland über alles. Would that be okay? Or would everybody just go right straight through the roof? Not because they don't like Germans, not because they don't like Germany's. It's just that kind of indoctrination, or whatever you want to label you put on it, doesn't belong in a classroom.
And I would prefer that young people, when they have these discussions, if they're with adults, that they have these discussions with adults that are appropriate for guiding them on the discussion. And I don't think that any single person, just because they have an idea about something, is necessarily an appropriate person for these discussions.
Especially an English teacher of all people.
Yes. Well, sir, I always enjoy your show, and it always makes me think a lot. And you have a great example about, what the boundaries are. And I think that these boundary discussions are very, very important.
Okay, Ron. Well, keep us posted. Stay in touch on this one, okay?
Hey, thank you, sir.
All right. Okay, we got to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to Troy Torres.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagatna location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
So here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago, Illinois, and the fans and the bleachers are all cheering for Troy Torres, who's taking a victory lap around the outfield right now, celebrating his 11th Blue Star. Congratulations, Troy. Oops. Congratulations, Troy.
Oh, I said I'm down with that. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. I love wearing winning the Blue Star. I think we're at like 11 out of 12 or something like that. So we at Canada are very proud of our score over there. I wanted to chime in on this gay issue because, well, I'm gay. But I think there's some perspective I can add to this. I'm 42 years old. I'm going to be 43 this year. And I went to school at a time when it was mildly scary to be so-called out of the closet or for people to know you're gay. When I was in elementary school, people threw around the fag word, and there were just things that were said back then that you just can't say now because you'll get canceled or people will be in such an uproar. But I kind of thought it built character for me. But times were different then. That was at a time when, it wasn't generally accepted by society to be gay. But that's changed. That's changed dramatically. And it changed I thought, for the better, maybe sometime in last decade. But then something bad happened. You had this situation where the majority of Americans were like, all right, live and let live. What people do in their bedroom is their thing. And, we had the gay parades and that was fine. It was the rainbow flags or whatever. But then the LGBTQ and just all of these letters started being added on, and there were all of these. There was just this slippery slope of what it was what the so-called gay movement from back in my day and before me was trying to promote, was trying to, stop the gay bashing. It was trying to get us to be generally accepted by the population. It was just ordinary citizens turned into this, we got to accept all of these perversions in society. And I think what's happening now, which is pretty sad, is that all those games that people in my generation and before us made for gay people are being diminished because, the general population is looking at some of this stuff and saying, you guys are promoting, some of you guys are promoting pedophilia, some of you guys are promoting the disfiguration of kids before their minds have fully developed to understand what it is that they want to do by injecting hormones or changing their body parts, et cetera, et cetera. And so whatever gains we made over the past, 50, 60 years in the so-called gay movement is being reversed by a fringe section of the LGBTQABCD plus community. And I just wanted to provide that perspective as someone who is gay and someone who grew up in a time where it was mildly scary to be openly gay.
Well, it's very interesting, Troy, and I'm glad you brought, called in and laid it out for us in the manner that you did, because I can't speak for everyone, but I have a suspicion that when your name comes up, people think of you as a hard-hitting journalist who always tells it like it is, just like you did a couple of minutes ago, and that's it.
Yeah. I think this debate is actually pretty simple, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I am proud. I'm pretty proud of the things that I've overcome in life. I don't have a rainbow flag, but I wouldn't be like, if someone gave it to me as a gift, I'd probably put it on my shelf somewhere and it would be in my house. But I mean, there really is. I don't know about this whole issue of almost forcing things on kids. Really, and not just gay stuff, but just a whole bunch of stuff that the American society seems to be trying to force on kids these days. That's perverse, and I don't know. Maybe this is why the Chinese are getting so strong. Is because we're getting so weak as a country.
Well, if we ever go to war in Taiwan, all we have to do is send our troops over there and circulate their list of pronouns to the Chinese, and the Chinese will run up the white flag in a heartbeat.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful day. May the peace of the Lord be with you all.
Yeah, well, thanks again for calling, Troy. As always, Troy tells it like it is, and that's it. Very good. Yeah, okay. Where was I on this card here? Marie posted something else. He said it's to promote unity. So I asked him, why not put up a heterosexual flag? He said there isn't one, very confidently. I educated him and said, yes, there is one. It's black and white. Now, I don't know what it looks like, and I can't see myself investigating in one. Rather than be considered by factors such as sexual preference and things like that, I would just want people to accept me because, I'm really a good talk show host, and I'm pleasant and handsome and very modest, and so on. Okay, we have somebody here in the green room wanting to talk on the same subject, I guess. Yeah, it's Frenchie wants to talk on the top. Boy, this one really gets people's attention, Jose. Yeah, go for it, Frenchie. Did we lose him? Frenchie, we lost you. Call back right away. I'll just hang on for a second before I go to Smart Alec. That's him? Yeah, good afternoon, Frenchie.
Yeah, sorry, somebody hung up on me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good afternoon. I've been listening to the show all afternoon, and I think there is a common thing between what we see recently. When Chris Dueñas called regarding that, I forgot the name of the person at Adelup, that progressive Democrat that manufacture a fake legislative proposal. Those people, the PDA, the Progressive Democrats of America, has several goals they were created in 2004 during the Democratic Convention. And they basically are the ones that are pushing this far left agenda within the Democratic Party. And what is worrisome is that here on Guam, this guy has been given a platform to push that agenda. And part of that agenda, of course, is pushing further and further away the sexual minority agenda. And I'm glad McNichon and Troy called because, and you mentioned it yourself. I think when the gay lesbian movement started, people wanted to not be discriminated, right? So, which was, leave us alone. What we do in the privacy of our own home is private, and basically they won that fight. But then now the movement has been hijacked by a bunch of far left yahoos who are using the gay, lesbian, bisexual movement as a proxy to push their extremist agenda, just like they are using BLM, who in fact does not represent the black community, but, because they never defend, they never talk about the black-on-black crime, they never talk about the black cops that get killed, they never talk about all these issues. They just want push-buttons issue. And those PDA members, which this guy belongs to, are pushing that agenda and are encouraging people like that Camacho teacher to push the envelope further and further and further. And I think, it's good that people like Troy realize that, the agenda was hijacked, and now it has nothing to do with the original agenda of the gay, lesbian, and bisexual movement, which, by the way, really took form with the AIDS crisis, which was the consequences of the free sexual movement of the 60s, and which is also the reason why there were so many abortions at the time, because it was elective abortion by straight women that wanted to do whatever they wanted sexually and didn't want to pay the price. So this is all has a common goal, is that those movements have been hijacked, and you have what I would call useful idiots like that Robert Camacho at Southern High, who is pushing an agenda which on the long run hurts gay, lesbians, and bisexuals, because you can feel the mood. A lot of people are fed up, say, do whatever you want, but don't push that on my children or on my grandchildren. And a lot of gays and lesbians agree with that. Don't push it. But those radical leftists, because that's what they are, they're radical leftists, they are extremists. Those are the same people that don't see any problem. And it goes with our audit for Hollywood that we did earlier. It's, they're pushing the agenda. They want you to shut up, and they want you to take whatever they think is what the society should be, which most people reject. And Hope Cristobal, all those people, they all have that same agenda. They keep on pushing, and using useful idiots like that Camacho guy, who's actually hurting gay and lesbian people on the long run, because people are going to get fed up. there's going to be a boomerang effect, and a lot of innocent people will be taken in that sweep, and that's very sad. And if you don't believe that can happen, just a reminder, during the Weimar Republic in Germany in the 1920s, Berlin and Bonn and all those cities were far more open sexually than San Francisco ever was. And then that led to the Nazis arriving, and even though one of the most prominent Nazis was openly gay, Ernst Röhm, they ended up sweeping all the gays in concentration camp. And this should be food for thought, that you cannot push a general population that is on the principle accepting, but once you start pushing that on their children and grandchildren, people become a lot less understanding. And it is very dangerous. And this is the goal of the CRT. It is to divide us, to make us go against one another. And this is exactly what they're doing. And idiots like Camacho are doing the work for people that want to separate us rather than unite us.
Exactly. You know, the whole idea of identity politics is divide people into as many small groups or tribes as you possibly can and turn them against the power structure. Yeah. And the only people that profit for that are those extremists. Exactly. Well, thanks for chiming in on that one, Frenchie. I got to go from Paris straight to Wrigley Field, but good talking to you. And let's head for Wrigley Field, Jose.
We're already back. You want to go to Churchill Downs?
Yeah, that's right. We've been to Wrigley already. Yeah, we found Troy taking his victory laps in the outfield there. Yeah, let's go to Churchill Downs.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Okay, so here we go. The next item on the card is Smart Alec versus ancestral landowners. And I use that term very advisedly. You know how many times I've told you that it's a will-o'-the-wisp, it's propaganda, it's a creature of the media cartel, and it's completely unfactual. But the story ran in today's Daily News. Gov Guam could receive 5 excess federal properties. The former USO beach in Piti, where many Guam residents learned to swim, soon could be returned by the federal government to the government of Guam. But the property's 28 ancestral landowners. Now, how can this be? How can it be if the federal government owns it that there could be 28 ancestral landowners? Doesn't seem right, Jose. And their descendants can't get the property back, according to the governor. You know, this is Steve Limtianco, who's really a good reporter, but even Steve has bought into the new lingo, right? Ancestral landowners, get the property back, etc. They can't get the property back, according to the governor, who said she plans to give it to the village mayor's office. The 4-acre Piti property 13 acres of beachfront property at Dedido's Kangishan Beach are among 5 parcels soon to be returned federal excess land that GovGuam plans to keep for public purposes. Okay, now Steve really steps off the deep end here. In the next sentence, he says, Guam law preserves the claim of the island's indigenous people to their ancestral land. Okay, the only kind of claim, you can't preserve a non-existent claim. If you don't have a claim, there's nothing to preserve. And the pre-condemnation owners don't have a claim. So there's nothing to preserve. And nothing in any of the statutory guidance here talks about indigenous people. It's as though, it's as though Steve wants to notch it up one more. It's not enough just to give the land back to the original landowners. It's got to be for the indigenous people. So this is kind of a reverse Elizabeth Warren. We're going to find indigenous people and preserve their claims. It says Guam law preserves the claims of the island's indigenous people for their ancestral land by allowing excess federal land, most of which was condemned after World War II, to build military bases and related facilities to be returned to its ancestral owners and their families. The Ancestral Lands Commission is responsible for facilitating return of excess federal land, etc. For example, GovGuam continues to use excess federal land at Tidzin for an airport and must compensate those ancestral landowners for the 3rd time. To date, the Commission has returned more than 2,600 acres to ancestral owners, with the most recent return last November, when nearly 5 acres in Asen were returned to the estate of Ken A. Limtiako. But a federal law passed in 2000 now prohibits private land transfers for newly returned excess property, stating the land must be used for public purpose and cannot be transferred to an individual or entity for private use other than on a non-discriminatory basis. Basically meaning you put it up for sale to the highest bidder if you're going to do that, says the Department of, as your Director of Land Management, Joe Bora. So the reason I put this on the card here as Smart Alec versus the ancestral landowners is, of course, there'll be the obligatory ceremony when the deed is handed to Commissioner, what's his name, Alec? Forgot his first name. It's not really smart. Anyhow, Commissioner Alec and all the photo ops and the governor, and then all of the hand-wringing and mowing and weeping about not being able to give the land back to the original landowners. So it will be Commissioner, as you were Mayor Alec's responsibility to do something with the USO. And man, the potential is tremendous. During the time it was the USO, it was open to everybody. It was a great place to swim. You could book private parties there. They had a top-notch snack bar there. After the USO packed up and left, they gave it to United Seaman Service, same thing. And I don't know if that would be too big for, I think his name is Joe Alec. No, it's not.
Are you on with the mayor?
Yeah.
Jesse.
Jesse Alec, yeah. It might be too big for Jesse Alec's shop to run that, but perhaps he could work it out so he could contract with somebody to run it, because it's a really nice facility. I used to go there all the time when I first came to the island. But here's the rub. When Jesse Alec takes it over, the 22 ancestral landowners whose claims, because they're indigenous, whose claims have been preserved, they're going to want to move in there because, after all, it's their land, right? So
supposedly, yep.
Yeah, so Jesse Alec should not get too comfortable with that property because he is not the original owner. according to everything you read in the newspaper, the mainstream media, popular gossips, and on and on and on. Okay, I see I've got somebody here in the green room, and it's Repeat who wants to talk about return of land. Go ahead, Repeat.
Hey, Uncle Bob. Well, first of all, maybe the USO, which I have very, very fond memories of, maybe it should go to Park and Rec.
Well, I would have thought that, based on an organizational structure, until I renamed the second word in that title, Rex, W-R-E-C-K. Seeing what they did with the Paseo Stadium. But you're right.
Yeah, well, it just I listened to a different radio station this morning, and one of the Eagles Fields landowner, prior landowners, called in, and I was just listening, to what he was saying, and very, matter-of-factly laying out what it is that their family expects, so on and so forth. And number one was, of course, return of the land. And it just struck me as like, when someone really wants to believe in something, no matter how much facts you lay it out for them, they still just are dead set on believing whatever false reality they want to be the actual reality, and when the governor came out saying, that people are peddling fool's gold, I thought, wow, yeah, that's a very good way to say it, right? And maybe that would make people, understand, but it doesn't. I mean, people still persist in this false belief, that they're ever going to get that land back when it's just not legally possible, and it's also not equitable, being that they've already been compensated for it.
Twice.
Yeah. So I don't know, the psychology of it all, that's what I was talking about. The psychology of it all is just very fascinating to me.
Well, Pete, they say that it's much more difficult to convince someone that he's been conned than it is to con him in the first place. And that's exactly what's happened here. The politicians, with their pandering, have conned these people into the belief that if they bought this magic token and carried it around with them for the next year, they'd be wealthy. But in this case...
Yeah, and I deal with that with a lot of my clients, too. They have such high hopes and expectations of a certain outcome, and even if I explain it to them that that's just not legally possible, they're like, well, can you still try?
Mm.
It's just, the psychology is just very fascinating. That's all I wanted to comment on.
And as usual, very good comment, Pete. Thanks for calling in. And Pete's exactly right. No matter how many times, someone would say, you don't own the land. You haven't owned the land since the government took it in eminent domain. You were paid for it twice. It's not, even using the phrase getting it back isn't correct. It's getting it, It's just like, I could show you the house in my hometown that we sold when my dad had to move to Beloit to go to work in a defense plant. I've told that story before, Jose. We had this nice little house. My dad was carpooling from Elkhorn to Beloit, about 25 miles, when the guy who was the driver lost his top-rated gasoline stamp. He couldn't buy gas. They couldn't drive to Beloit. So we sold our house and moved into defense housing in Beloit. Now, I should be able to go back to my hometown and knock on the front door and say, hey, I want my land back, right? And the person who's living there ought to say, oh, yeah, sure. Could you give us a day or two to pack some of our stuff?
It's the fair thing to do.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do. But, of course, I'm not indigenous, so maybe that wouldn't work very well. Okay, we got about 3 more minutes to go here. Let me see what I got to say here. Marie Rojas is back on Facebook again. What is she saying, Jose? some of her Facebook posts.
I think she's just, let me pull it up here also. Has more, I'm not able to pull it up. Oh, she's talking about, in going through the policy, and I'm not able to get that. Oh, here it is. That the policy for schools is that there's a mandate that the Guam flag and the American flag has to be posted or hoisted up and flying at the schools. And she says even that it's not being regarded.
In the classroom or just at the school?
I can't remember if she said it was the classroom. I mean, that comment's not being able to come up anymore.
Yeah.
But I found that interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, there probably isn't enough room for that in the rainbow flag. But I mean, I think Troy really laid it out quite nicely, didn't he?
Yeah, and that sometimes that movements get co-opted by overly passionate people, and people are just too dumb to stop.
And sometimes by opportunists.
Opportunists too.
They see a car kind of rolling down the street, and it doesn't appear there's a driver there, so they jump in and take the wheel. That's what happened, as far as I'm concerned, with the GFT.
But see, that's the thing, is we ought to have these warnings the same way that they warn us about fraud and fraudulent phone calls and spam and phishing emails. The same thing with these activists. You know, there's fraud involved, especially with BLM.
Well, that's kind of my job, Jose. I try to do it as best I can. Okay, we're going to have to say goodbye to our president here. Let's go, Brandon!
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3. 101.3 HD3.
A devastating outcome. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. 7 people have now been confirmed dead following a Pennsylvania chocolate factory explosion. Mayor Samantha Kaag details damage to nearby buildings.
There will be 3 buildings condemned around the current site, which is just a precaution as we move into the investigation phase to figure out what caused this and how we can prevent anything from happening like this in the future. This doesn't mean they are slated for demolition or uninhabitable, simply that there will still be work happening around them as we proceed and will need to be looked at further.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro announced that resources would be made available to support the ongoing recovery efforts. Tens of thousands of protesters demonstrating across Israel following Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's abrupt firing of his defense minister for opposing his plan to overhaul the judicial system. Fox's Trey Yingst is in the midst of the unrest in Jerusalem.
Police in Jerusalem are clashing with demonstrators outside of the Prime Minister's residence. They're using water cannons to try to move these protesters. This comes as Israeli officials are concerned the demonstrations will create a fracture in Israeli society and ultimately create a security incident that could endanger the entire Jewish state.
Israel's largest trade union saying it will strike in protest of Netanyahu's plan. A strike could potentially halt large parts of the nation's economy. The FDIC saying it has agreed to First Citizens Bank's bid to acquire troubled Silicon Valley Bank. The North Carolina-based bank's purchase involves the sale of all deposits and loans of Silicon Valley Bank, which collapsed on March 10th. It was the second largest bank failure in U.S. history. New York-based Signature Bank's collapse soon followed, raising concerns about the nation's banking system. America is listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and editor of the Transom.com daily newsletter, and I'm inviting you to join a conversation every week with the smartest thinkers out there about the issues Americans face and where we are going as a nation. This show will feature deep dive interviews with newsmakers and some of your favorite Fox News analysts. I hope you'll join me.